The airline called it a ferry flight, an empty aircraft repositioned overnight for morning service. Just 3 crew on board, Captain Ross, First Officer Miller, and Flight Attendant Dana. No passengers, no pressure, or so they thought. When they boarded, the cabin was silent, rows of seats gleaming under dim emergency lights. But in the cockpit, Ross froze. A man in full uniform sat in the left-hand seat, hands resting neatly on the yoke. "Excuse me, sir," Ross said cautiously. "This is our aircraft tonight." The man didn't move. His cap was pulled low, shadowing his face. Dana stepped forward. "He's not on the crew list." Before anyone could protest further, the stranger rose, wordless, and stepped into the jump seat behind them. He fastened the belt, staring straight ahead. Ross and Miller exchanged glances. Against their better judgment, they decided to proceed. The night was cold. The runway lights stretched out like a river of fireflies, and the empty plane felt like a tomb. At 3,000 feet, the autopilot refused to engage. The yoke resisted Miller's grip, as though an invisible hand held it steady. Dana appeared in the doorway, pale. "He hasn't blinked once." Ross turned. The man sat rigid, cap shadowing a face that now seemed wrong. Skin too smooth, features blurred. "Who are you?" Ross demanded. Silence. Then the radios crackled, not with air traffic control, but with a recording of their own voices. A transmission from 10 years ago. Ross's voice screaming Mayday, Miller sobbing, Dana praying. A flight that had gone down in the Atlantic. Ross's blood ran cold. He'd read about that crash as a rookie. None of the crew survived. The faceless pilot leaned forward, his gloved hands settling on the throttles. The plane responded to him, not them, engines roaring like a beast unleashed. "Stop!" Miller shouted, wrestling the controls. But the yoke snapped violently, nearly breaking his wrist. Dana screamed as the intercom clicked on by itself. The stranger's voice finally spoke. Flat, mechanical, like an echo through metal. "You don't fly this plane." "I do." The aircraft surged higher into black clouds that swallowed the stars. Lightning cracked around them, illuminating the stranger's face. Smooth skin stretched over nothing, a mask of absence. The altimeter spun wildly. Alarms blared, and as the plane climbed into the storm, Ross realized with dawning horror. They weren't flying to any destination. They were flying into the past. The turbulence had battered Flight 317 for over an hour before Captain Lewis finally admitted defeat. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to weather conditions, we'll be diverting to a nearby airfield." Passengers sighed with relief as the jet descended through angry clouds. Below, a strip of glowing runway lights pierced the fog, an oasis of order in the storm. The landing was smooth, almost suspiciously so, like sliding into a dream. The ground crew guided them to the gate in silence. Their reflective vests gleamed under the floodlights, but none of the crew ever spoke, not even to each other. Inside the terminal, the air was stale and dry. Rows of chairs sat empty, a departure board flickered nonsense symbols, and the overhead announcements were nothing more than garbled static. Passengers whispered nervously. Some searched for staff, others for food, but the kiosks were empty, the vending machines unplugged. The only thing that seemed alive was the low hum of fluorescent bulbs, buzzing like trapped flies. After an hour, Captain Lewis ordered everyone back on board. Nobody argued. The storm had passed, and the plane waited on the tarmac, doors open as if eager to swallow them again. Back in their seats, passengers noticed something wrong. The plane had been refueled, yet none of them had seen trucks, hoses, or workers. A little girl tugged her mother's sleeve. "Mommy," she whispered, "the people outside don't have faces." The mother hushed her, but others had noticed too. The ground crew stood at the edges of the floodlights, watching. Their heads turned in unison, but where mouths and eyes should be, there was only smooth skin. Panic spread. A man demanded they not take off, but the engines roared before anyone could protest further. The plane taxied forward, guided by those blank figures, and lifted into the night sky. 30 minutes later, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "We'll be resuming our original course." A flight attendant checked the manifest and paled. Every passenger's name was still listed, but in a faint gray, as if half erased. The little girl began to cry softly. "We're not supposed to leave," she whispered. When the plane finally touched down at its intended destination, airport staff boarded immediately. Every seatbelt was fastened. Every bag was still in the overhead compartments. But the cabin was empty. The plane had landed perfectly, without a single soul aboard.